All right. I guess we're gonna ruffle some feathers. We're definitely not here for everybody to like us, that's for sure.
Always do that. I'm a night rider.
Okay,
Every time that I go up, it's midnight, I swear I get higher.
a little
I
bit.
swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider.
Uh-huh.
Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man.
I'm a night rider.
Every time that I go up, it's midnight, I swear I get higher.
What is going on, my fellow Americans? It is Monday, July 15th. I guess I'm revealing my hand a bit here by telling you when I record the podcast, but if you've never edited a podcast before, I don't want any comments as to why it comes out a whole 6 days later. Moving forward, I think that I just needed to really get this off of the chest and get going with it now. All of the thoughts and ideas are fresh. I've had a couple of days to kind of sit back and reflect and really do some examinations, and I did find quite the thread that I wanted to get into on this. On Saturday afternoon, the former President Donald J. Trump's life was threatened in an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, at a rally while he was giving a speech. At the moment where he was pointing at a chart on illegal immigrations, shots rang out into the crowd. These shots came from about 150 meters to the east of Donald Trump. I guess that would be his right-hand side. I don't know exactly where directionally it was, but that's where it came from. On the top of a warehouse building, there was a 20-year-old man with an AR-15 rifle shooting at the former president. By the grace of God, a presidential candidate and former president was not shot and killed in that moment. I can only assume and be grateful for the dissension that has not descended across the country in the case that that did happen. You know, you talk about politics and you see that things are bubbling over, and I talk about politics as well as everything else on the Bookmarks with Bump podcast. This is what you're listening to, Bookmarks with Bump, a social commentary on all things current and electrifying. I said before that we're going to dive into everything. There are some topics some people like to stay away from. Me, on the other hand, I am not shy when it comes to anything at all. If there is a conversation to be had, we will have it, especially the conversations that make you uncomfortable, and this is most certainly one of them. Last week we spoke on comfortability and how you breed contempt and comfortability and familiarity. So, we're going to get a little uncomfortable today. I'm going to speak a little bit of harsh truth. And apparently, that's not really welcome here in this country. If you ask our former president how the harsh truth works out, he'll point to the headlines from a couple weeks ago. This is the same man who has been framed, someone who said he would become a dictator on day one of his presidency. When in context, what he had said was on day one, he would shut down the border, he would change the policies that Biden changed, and he would be a dictator for a day to reverse the damage that was done to this country over the last 4 years. The radical media decided to take those words and spin them to make it sound like he said that he was a dictator. Now, let me just get one thing clear. Am I a Trump supporter? Am I a Biden supporter? I'll be honest with you, I'm not very supportive of the government, period. I unfortunately feel as if the government cannot be trusted. And I believe I'm in the majority by saying that, and that is a sad place to be in. Donald Trump said something a few years ago. He said that the government isn't here to save anybody. God saves people. In America, we don't worship the government. We worship God. And I wholeheartedly believe that. Unfortunately, I believe that the morals of this country are being ripped apart. God isn't as prominent on a day-to-day basis as he once was. You see in the Pledge of Allegiance, do we even say that in schools anymore? I'm not sure. One nation under God. I believe people were allowed to sit down for the pledge if they didn't believe in God. You know, I don't believe that anybody should be forced into believing anything. I think that forming your own opinion is very important. But when it comes to where we live Individualism is a very big driving factor for how you continue to live your life once you're done with the structure of school. Everybody is destined for a career, one way or another. There are some people who still believe in the patriarchy. There are some people who still believe in the idea of a family unit. There are some people who still believe in God and the importance of church. And without putting everything about myself out there, I'm one of them. You know what? Why not put everything about myself out there? I am one of them. I am a Christian. I go to church every Sunday. I believe a majority of the progress that I've made in my life is due to a huge push once I was saved by Jesus Christ. My life before God was in it, compared to where it is now, it's a complete 180. It's a U-turn. It's a man who is hopeless, depending on himself and his own devices, trying to get by, to understanding that the world isn't about me, and it's not about me here. There's something bigger than me that you may not get all the answers right away, but they will be given to you eventually if you continue down your path. You just have to have faith. And right now, one thing I don't have faith in is the government. I don't have faith in the government, and I don't have faith in the news. The news that you see on TV is not the news. The real way you'll get the news nowadays is by picking up your local paper, reading the information that's being reported. The news is supposed to be information, informative. It's supposed to be an influx of information of current events and topics that are going on a day-to-day basis, whether it be local or nationwide. And it's not supposed to be somebody's opinion being shoved down your throat. That's what a podcast is for. And now what we have is a split media, split news media where there is no real information. There's only opinions. In my opinion, it appears as if the government and these establishments have such little faith in the intelligence of the civilization that they want to tell you what to think and how to live and how to breathe and how to act and how to feel about every little thing that goes on. I, on the other hand, believe that we are all smart enough to form our own opinions, and Darwinism is real. It's survival of the fittest. It might be harsh, but it is what it is. That's the truth. And the truth is somebody, regardless of moral intent, regardless of payment, regardless of orders, decided to take shots at a presidential candidate. So while we have one side of the aisle claiming that democracy is in danger, we have the other side of the aisle being shot at. Where is the danger? Where is the danger in running a campaign? Where is the danger in rallying support? That's what you're supposed to do as a presidential candidate. You're supposed to get out there in the swing states and other states nonetheless and talk about your policies and campaign. You're supposed to greet the people, see the people, make an impact on them, garner donations, garner support. Whatever it is that you're looking for on the campaign trail, you can find it by going out and being with the people that you're serving. I want to believe the well wishes that have been sent out from the Democrats towards the former president, Donald Trump. They're wishing him a speedy recovery. They're saying there's no place for violence. But if we look back over the past couple months, past couple weeks even, Joe Biden was a man saying that Donald Trump needed a bullseye on his head. But that's inconspicuous. We have media claiming that this man was Hitler, when I argue that the Clintons are more closer to Hitler due to the dozens and dozens of bodies that may be under their belt. I don't know anybody that Donald Trump has killed. But I don't know these people personally. So who knows? Maybe there's something I'm missing. But you'd think that a billionaire whose life has been in the public eye for so long, if they were doing dirt like that, it would be coming out. The same way that it comes out for... let me just refrain from naming names here, but you're getting my point, I hope. You could call it a conspiracy theory, you could call it whatever you want, but to me, this is a conspiracy. To me, this is somebody felt threatened by the existence of a man who doesn't need to bow down to the establishment, somebody who can't be bought. And I believe that's the biggest thing that helped Trump gain support. We had this idea that politicians were bought and paid for by the lobbies. The policies that they're pushing out are due to companies that are donating to their campaigns in huge, huge portions of money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars coming in towards campaigns due to speeches or due to what type of promises are made behind closed doors. Is that politics? Is that what Theodore Roosevelt had thought about? I don't think so. To me, Theodore Roosevelt is one of the greatest presidents that has ever existed. We're talking about a man who made changes for this country in monumental ways. Let's start with breaking up monopolies. Monopolies that are somehow miraculously coming back in ways such as Amazon or companies like BlackRock or other companies that buy up huge amounts of land and put Amazon warehouses on them, or instead of farming, just let it sit. Companies that buy up houses and decide to rent them out rather than sell them to the American people who work hard. Think about it like me, a man who's just an average man. My dream is to own a house and raise a family one day. That's all my dream is. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to achieve is to raise children and continue a legacy of my family name. Is that something that should be taken away from me? Because the powers that be decide that I'll own nothing and I'll like it? I'm not sure. But this is the story as we know it right now. A random 20-year-old acting completely alone walked within 150 yards of a presidential campaign rally with a rifle, climbed onto a rooftop in full view of Secret Service snipers, set up his shot and fired without anyone intervening and with no help from anyone. This 20-year-old is also so politically radical as to attempt an assassination, and yet not radical enough to have ever posted any political writings or commentary on any social media site ever in his life. He also wrote no manifesto and left behind no indication about why he did it. His last and only political act before attempting to kill the Republican candidate was to register as a Republican. To me, that seems like perfect casting. Now, you must believe this and ask no questions about it, or else you are a conspiracy theorist. And one thing we know about assassination attempts is that there's never any conspiracy involved. One problem with this is that the Democrats have been accusing Trump of incitement for years. They can't leave a trace behind, indicating that anybody was incited by the rhetoric that they're putting out. Because from a independent voter's view, I don't see incitement. I don't see Trump saying that anybody needs a bullseye on their head. I don't see Trump inciting violence. And even as January 6th happened, I didn't see Trump say storm the Capitol, break into the building, destroy sacred American land. I saw him ask his supporters to protest peacefully, an election that he perceived as a scam. And when he said it was a scam, they called him a sore loser. Where were the people calling Hillary a sore loser when she said it was a scam and they accused him of colluding with Russia? This is the problem that I have. I don't have any problem due to me supporting Trump or me supporting the other side. I have a problem with the hypocrisy, the blatant hypocrisy, and the way they twist it, the way they ask their questions, the way they point their interviews, to make it seem as if they've never done anything wrong. They've never done anything to like. When Donald Trump was elected in 2016, he didn't win the presidency. He wasn't officially president until the pandemic happened, and then all the problems were his. If you had watched the debate from a few weeks ago, you would see Biden pointing out a lot of figures about how the country was in 2020. Indicating that under Donald Trump's watch, the country started to fall apart. The economy started to fall apart. But I don't remember Donald Trump signing or executing mandates to close down small businesses and take jobs away from people. Those were indicative of local agencies. State by state, they decided to do things like this. And there were states that remained open, such as Texas, Florida, and South Dakota, who continued to flourish. For one example, me being a podcaster and also being a podcast fan, you could look at the exodus from Los Angeles to Austin in that period of time. As Los Angeles started to fall apart, and the entertainment industry decided to leave, it went down to Austin, Texas. And now what is Austin, Texas? It's like the capital of comedy in America. Do you think that had anything to do with the mandates? Do you think that was caused by Donald Trump? What I hope to do here is to create some thinking patterns, create some inward thinking, give you a safe place to understand that, oh, I don't have to think one way or the other. I can be on the fence and see both sides, because that's how I feel. You know, I live in a country where I didn't always have conservative types of morals, but due to the progressive stance of a lot, I got a second chance in life. Would I have gotten that second chance if we were under such a strict policy? I'm not sure, but we weren't. I live in a more progressive state, being Connecticut. I guess I'm lucky for that, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the chance I have at life. I'm grateful for the chance I have to sit here and speak today. It's interesting to me how a 20-year-old can get a hold of an AR-15 and enough rounds to feel comfortable to try and take out the president in front of Secret Service and local officials. Your average gun owner who works a 40-hour job, and I know this because I live with a couple, they'll go to find bullets just to shoot at the range, and it's almost as if they can't afford the bullets. And it's not because they're broke, it's because of the price. Bullets they're expensive. Guns are expensive. These are not cheap toys. You're looking at getting into something, you're looking at half a paycheck at least if you want to get yourself a handgun. If you want to get yourself a rifle, you're looking at a full paycheck. If you want rounds for that, you're looking at $100 for a box of, who knows, maybe 50 bullets. But somehow these people who are complete bums, who sit on their ass and take Prozac all day, they find these ways to conjure up guns and bullets and commit these heinous, heinous crimes. Is this a mix? Is this a mix of wanting to take away the Second Amendment? I'm not sure. Then you have these posts on Facebook saying, the next time a third grader gets shot at, I want to see outrage like this. We are outraged when schools get shot up. I'm not a gun owner. I'm pretty sure I'll never be able to own a gun. However, I believe in the Second Amendment because it was meant to protect us from a tyrannical government. Do I believe in guns as a hobby? No, not really. You know, it shouldn't be a lifestyle. In some cases, it is. It's okay. It's fun to go out shooting. Everybody has their own hobbies. That's what America is about. But nobody's hobby is to go into a school and shoot kids, just as it shouldn't be to go out and shoot people in the street, the same way it shouldn't be to go shoot at presidential candidates. We don't have a gun problem in this country. We have a mental health problem. That's one thing. A couple weeks ago, Joe Biden was saying Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation, a threat to freedom, democracy, a threat to everything America stands for. I don't understand where this all comes from. It makes no sense to me, really. He's a threat to trade. Our trade, we were in such a good spot trading across the world. We had broken deals with China. We had broken deals with Russia that people thought would never happen. You know, and it's sad. It's sad that the media is able to corrupt so many people into thinking we were in such a bad spot from 2016 to 2019. I've watched over the last 4 years, I get the same groceries every week. I've watched over the last 4 years my grocery bill go from $120 a week to $200 a week. My paycheck hasn't grown that much. But the inflation is the fault of the administration behind it. And this is the problem that we have all over the world. It's not just the government, it's accountability and a lack of accountability. When people start pointing the finger back at themselves is the only time that things are really going to get fixed. If you're too busy blaming anybody else for what's going on in your life or in the world, you're never going to come to a real answer because you're avoiding it. You're avoiding the real problem. It's okay to be imperfect. I'm not perfect. I don't work every day to be closer to perfect. Perfect is something I'll never be. The only perfect man that ever existed was Jesus Christ. And they still persecuted him and put him on the cross. Who am I to think that's something I can obtain? I don't want to be perfect. I just want to be good enough. Good enough for me. That's what we should all be. Good, not great. Whatever it is, there's something fishy going on here. I don't like how after the debate this happens before the RNC and Donald Trump is formally announced as the Republican candidate. He's already a shoo-in for nomination. He has no competition. We know that he's running for president. We know that he's ahead in the polls by a lot after the debate. It's just very fishy timing that before he announces his vice president, he gets shot at, almost as if they're attempting to kill him before there's any influence of him at all. They wanted to be swept under the rug. Me questioning this? Sure, you could call this my tinfoil hat podcast. That's cool. But in reality, what it is somebody asking questions, the obvious questions. A lot of these things are just the obvious. And I was going to wait till the next episode to talk about this, but I think that it means something right now to speak about it. I had a couple things that I was looking at, and this was a thread from a month ago where a woman named Heather Mullins said she's worn her MAGA hat every time she's flown for the last 4 years, and she's got thousands of fist bumps, but never got any hate. Very interesting, by the way. This guy who's universally hated is somehow garnered universal support. Apparently, there was a first time for everything. She had a flight attendant on American Airlines skip her in first class when asking everybody if they wanted a drink. She asked the person next to her and then walked away. She thought that it was odd that she wasn't asked. So when she came back, I asked her if I could get a drink, and in the nastiest voice, she said, "No, I'll be back for you," and proceeded to serve the people behind me. She was in shock. She was the last one to get served, and now everyone on the plane is floored and talking about it. Heather Mullins goes on to say that it's sad this happened in America, but she's grateful for all the people around her saying how awful it was that it happened to her. She's an anomaly. Most people are not like that. Now, when I found this thread and I decided I was going to talk about it, I titled it as Fabricated Political Outrage, because I don't know how much of it is real. How much of the political outrage is real on the internet? How much is farmed? How much is botted? How much is just something to get the pot stirred? How much of this is even real? That's what I really want to know when you see posts like this. You know, was everything that we've seen on the internet the last 4 years part of that rhetoric that the Democrats have been putting out about how terrible this man is and how he's a threat to democracy? That 20-year-old on the roof was more of a threat to democracy than President Trump ever was. I can say that. A real threat to democracy would be President Trump egging on the people on January 6th, telling them not to leave. If he wanted to, he could have 1 million people show up at that place. But he didn't. He knew better. He knew he'd have a second chance. And with that chance, it would only grow stronger. Think about it. He's had the last 4 years to campaign. Candidates don't get that long. Candidates may prepare for 4 years and then campaign for 8 months. And here we are. 4 years of campaigning for the former president was distracted by fighting against felony charges and ultimately losing, appealing, winning some appeals, losing others, depending on the district he's in. To anybody who's questioning anything at all, anybody who's observant and astute enough to form their own opinions would see things like this and say, something's weird here, something's not right, something's off. And yeah, I'll admit I'm one of those people. And all of that leads up to Saturday, where he was shot in the ear. And I don't know if this man acted alone, like Lee Harvey Oswald did. Wink, wink. But when they missed, they lost. If this was an establishment idea, to grab another drugged up kid, put a gun in his hand, and tell him, this is what you're going to do. They failed miserably. Because on Saturday afternoon, July the 13th, President Trump became our 47th president. We almost don't even need to vote. We don't need to hit the polls in November. Universally, he won on that day. When the bullet grazed his ear, he fell to the ground. He stood up and pumped his fist at the crowd, surrounded by Secret Service members who, listen, they did a great job hoarding him and surrounding him. As after the first shot rang out, President Trump did what I'm assumed he's been told to do time and time again if he gets shot at, to just hit the ground and wait. And that's exactly what he did. He heard the gunshot. He went down to the ground. The Secret Service dog piled on top of him like he just scored his first touchdown in the NFL. They then picked him up, and before they could walk him away, he said, wait. And he looked out to the crowd of his supporters. He pumped his fist and he told them, fight. Not physically, but fight at the polls. Fight with your voice. Stand up for what you believe in. And a lot of these people, they just believe in America. They believe in the American dream. When I look at Trump rallies, I don't see a bunch of idiots or deplorables, which is what they've been painted out as by Democratic candidates. I look at people like me, who work a trade, who believe that their trade should be a career enough to get them what they deserve, which is shelter, which is food, which is clothing. Some people may call that the bare necessities. I call that a comfortable life worth earning. I look at people that are firefighters and policemen, people who serve their counties, who serve their towns, who serve their cities. I see cashiers, I see store managers, I see tradesmen like me, and I see people with no job and no hope. All of them comprise Americans. At the end of the day, whether you're Republican or Democratic, you're an American. And no matter who our president is, you need to have pride in our country. The Secret Service did a great job as he was shot. However, I found an account on Twitter that posted a thread, and this name is Lieutenant Tim McMillan, and this will be what I go over to finish this podcast. This man claims to have personally worked several presidential and vice presidential security details, and apparently he has some thoughts based on what happened Saturday. The last 30 minutes or so has been my thoughts, my feelings. My feelings are that you can't believe what you're told. You have to see for yourself and form your own opinions. I believe that what happened on Saturday, whether it was a man acting alone or a man goaded by the unseen, we'll call it, regardless of what his intent or what his motivation was, what happened Saturday was disgusting. It was disgusting and it was dark, and us as Americans were better than this. We're better than this, and we know we are. We know we are. We, the people, know we are. Our government may not believe in us. The establishment may not believe in us. The corporations may not believe in us. They may think we're just dumb consumers here to gobble up whatever they're selling. But a lot of us are people who want to own businesses, who want to create products, who want to be the people selling things to people. We want to be neighbors with one another again. Before I get into this thread, I'm going to say one last thing. And Vivek Ramaswamy came out and he spoke on this in front of Abraham Lincoln's statue. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He was fought to the very last day over it. He was shot over it. The Civil War was on the brink of happening because of it. And he was a Republican. So think about that before the news tells you how to feel about Republicans. Sides lie about the other side all the time. And that's just what it is. It shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to lie to get ahead. And that's why I don't believe in these people. That's why I don't trust them. They lie to win. Even when you win, if you cheat to win, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you lost. they have to live with that guilt if they have a conscience enough to feel it. So as of yesterday, the thread begins with Tim McMillan coming out saying, having personally worked several presidential and vice presidential security details, here's some of my thoughts based on the available information on the assassination on Trump. 1. The Secret Service employ a multi-tiered defense and depth approach to protective missions. An inner tier offer close protection support, these being the agents you see rushing in and surrounding Trump after the initial shots go off. A second middle tier is tasked with identifying and defending against mid-range threats. This tier is largely comprised of local and state law enforcement, temporarily attached to the security detail. This is the area that I worked on prior details. And then finally, you have an extended tier, which covers long-distance threats. This can include counter-sniper details, cyber and signet support, and CBRN defense, which are air supports. 2. People have wondered, how could the counter-snipers in the videos not have seen the would-be assassin prior to him getting off a shot? And this is because the area of responsibility for those counter-snipers on the roof behind Trump was very likely in the extended tier. Essentially, they were scanning for threats at great distances well beyond the roughly 150 meters the threat appeared. This is evidenced by the fact that the elevated counter-sniper has to dramatically drop his line of sight to respond to the shooter. Secret Service advanced teams would have absolutely pre-scouted the location and identified the building the shooter used as a vulnerable spot in the defense. Which begs the question, how was this guy still able to climb on the roof and get off a shot? Based on limited details at this point, in his opinion, the security breakdown occurred in the middle tier, which would likely include law enforcement who were supposed to be assigned to the area near the outbuildings. How that significant of a breakdown could occur is up for speculation. However, like I said, this tier is largely dependent on local law enforcement and not the Secret Service. So speculatively, the local LEOs, law enforcement officers, who were supposed to be in the area and make sure no one with a gun climbed on the roof, messed up. People have said that witnesses saw the guy with the gun on the roof, told police, but they failed to respond and prevent the assassination attempt. So how does that happen? Well, there's typically limited lines of communications between the Secret Service and the local LEOs working the middle tier. You usually have one or two local law enforcement officer liaisons who have direct communications with the Secret Service, which means communications on the ground. Which means communications on the ground between the local LEOs being told about the shooter are being routed through dispatch to local liaisons, and then to Secret Service. So there's a breakup in that communication for some reason. Compounding the difficulty to rapidly respond is the fact that there's always some confusion and inefficiency when multiple different LEO agencies come together to work a detail. Most of these agencies aren't used to working with each other and aren't given much information beyond a few pre-event briefings. I mean, we're in 2024. Come on, man. Communication is key, and we've been saying that for years. So how are you not practicing that? This man goes on to say he actually saw what can go wrong in these scenarios firsthand when President Bush's Secret Service detail almost engaged the local police SWAT counter-sniper team during the 2004 G8 summit. No one had properly communicated the local SWAT team's position. So all the Secret Service saw was heavily armed individuals in the line of sight of the president. The whole thing was seconds away from being a tragic incident. In this same vein, there was likely some delay and confusion with the initial reports of a person with a gun on the roof, as local cops and Secret Service agents would all be trying to confirm the shooter didn't belong to one of the security support teams. So in summary, when looking for blame in this massive security failure, if I was a betting man, I'd say the answer rests with whatever detail were assigned to the area near the buildings, likely local LEOs. I'll also add that I worked 5 presidential details as a local LEO attachment. Even though I was in close proximity for each detail, in only 2 of them did I actually ever see the president or vice president. That was Bush while he was in the limo driving away, and Cheney, but that was because I was on an inner position, feet away from him. You're explicitly trained that your eyes are always on the ground, surroundings, and potential threats. Never on the subject themselves for obvious reasons. Now, my experience is entirely limited to official presidential visits, which are planned at least months and in some cases a year in advance. It's likely that some of the breakdowns or issues I mentioned can be exponentially increased when it comes to campaign trips, as these stops can come up or change on very short notice. So if you ask me, if I was planning to take out my opponent in a campaign, I would probably do it from that middle tier, rather than the extended tier, which could be surveyed by Secret Service in the sky. The middle tier is where I'd want to attack, in the law enforcement zone, where I'd have to be getting around cops rather than agents. But I would never plan something like that because, well, first of all, I know that thou shalt not kill. That's a big one. And two, that's not how things are done. Violence is never the answer. You'll remember that. I mean, that's what everybody's been saying. Violence is never the answer. Violence is never the answer. And it really isn't. However, somebody decided the only way to win in this would be to resort to violence. This is all just so fishy to me, and it's indicative of the crazy times that we're living in. But be grateful that things didn't get crazier, because that's where this was headed. If the former president Donald Trump was shot and killed on Saturday, I could only assume that the, quote, radical supporters of Donald Trump would retaliate in some strange way. And I hate to say that. And don't do what this has been designed to do. We were taught our whole lives that America is a mixing pot. And we were taught our whole lives to keep your political opinions private. Vote in private. Talk policy in private. Don't make it your life. Far too many people are doing and have done that. And I believe that's a big part of how we are where we are. A lot of this to me seems like design dissension. They want chaos. Whoever's in charge. Whoever's really in charge. And you know that whoever's really in charge, I hate to say it, Joe, isn't President Biden. After the debate, the media was telling him to step down. He comes out and says, I'm not stepping down. I'm running for president. Well, what do you expect somebody with no brain to do when they've been told that there's something for 4 years? They're going to continue to believe that. I wouldn't be surprised that, say he gets reelected and lives another 4 years, that he decides that he's going to run again after the end of his second term. I mean, what the hell? This guy really thinks he's the president. They don't even want him to run anymore because he failed so miserably at the debate. They don't know what to do. They don't. At least if they killed Trump, they'd be able to install another Republican candidate who's bought and corrupted. And that way they can continue forward with their plan to make us own nothing and like it. And if you think that's a conspiracy, why don't you go on YouTube and watch some of the Global Economic Forum and see what those people are saying about what we should be doing with our lives. There are people out there who want to make our decisions for us. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be very hard for them to be able to do that, but it's not impossible. They don't think it's impossible. And these people have figured everything out so far, so they'll find a way to make it possible, but not with somebody standing in their way. And to me, that's who Donald Trump became. He became the person standing in the way of the establishment. If he needs to be harsh and brash, that's fine, because I'm fine being uncomfortable. Some people aren't, but I focus more on results than feelings. Sometimes you gotta crack a few eggs to make an omelet. Sometimes you're gonna piss a few people off on the way to being great. I know this is a step away from what I'm usually doing when I'm coming on these podcasts and talking, but I feel like this was way too important to just let it slide. We are smarter than they believe we are. Remember that. If that's the one message you get out of this whole podcast, if you think I'm some Trumper now, or if you think I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist, go ahead and think it. That's fine. But open your eyes, watch what's going on, and make your own opinions. That's all I'm doing here. I'm going to run a poll for this one. And for the platforms where there is no poll, let me know in the comments. Who you voting for this November? Oh, man. All right, we didn't have to think about things like this a long time ago. I remember those days, and I miss them. But this is the first presidential assassination attempt in 40 43 years since Reagan was shot in 81. I believe that guy was just some kook who was in love with Jodie Foster and trying to impress her. I don't know if she didn't like Reagan much or anything, but I don't really like Reagan much when we look at today. I guess he was universally loved, but if you look at crime, I believe crime came from when he cut national funding for asylums. Like I said earlier, we have a mental health problem in this country, not a gun problem. We have a huge problem with people being left to their own devices who just simply cannot take care of themselves and can't be trusted in society. Everybody deserves a chance, right? Of course. But eventually, with chance after chance, you have to face consequences. I don't know what the poll will be. I don't know what the question will be, but let me know what your thoughts are below. I'm interested to see what you think. Was this a 20-year-old kook who had guns and wanted to kill the former president? Was this a conspiracy? Whatever it was a week ago, and right now we're safe. But watch out for anything that's happening. And don't turn on your neighbor. Just because somebody has a different opinion of you, that doesn't make them your enemy. Opinions don't make enemies out of people. Violence does. Dissent does. Be friendly. Be a good neighbor. Wave to people. Say hi to people. Show love to people. Speak kindly to people. We, as Americans, are in this together. You and I, the people in the private sector, we are in this together. No matter who our president is, no matter who your local representative is, no matter who your senator is, no matter what your politics lean towards, we have to lean on one another. And that's the message I hope I can get across here. As no matter who you like or what you like, we all have to love each other to succeed. That's the only way peace will prevail, with love and kindness. And sometimes kindness comes in a harsh way. You have to tell people harsh truth. But if you're looking out for somebody's best interests, you know you're coming from a good place. And that's all that matters. And that's all I have to say. I love you all, and I hope you have a great week. God bless America.